The massive doors of the Grand Assembly Hall opened with a deep rumble. Commander Lee Tae-ho walked through them, his black boots making soft sounds on the polished floor. Behind him, Ambassador Park So-min moved with careful steps, her diplomatic uniform neat and clean. Lee Tae-ho had seen many strange things in his 15 years as a Navy SEAL, but nothing had prepared him for this place. The ceiling stretched up so high he could barely see it. Strange lights floated in the air without wires or supports. Around the huge circular room, hundreds of different creatures sat in special chairs made for their bodies. Some aliens looked like giant insects with clicking sounds coming from their mouths. Others had smooth, wet skin like dolphins but walked on two legs. A few had scales that changed colors as they moved. Lee had studied pictures of these species, but seeing them in person was different. "Stay close, but not too close," Park So whispered to him in Korean. "Let them see you, but don't make them nervous." Lee nodded once. He knew his job. He was here to protect the ambassador and to show that humans took this meeting seriously. His uniform was simple compared to the fancy robes and metal suits worn by alien guards. But Lee knew that simple could be more dangerous than flashy. They walked to the section marked for Earth. The seats were small compared to some of the giant aliens, but they fit humans perfectly. Lee stood behind Park So-min's chair, his hands crossed behind his back. His eyes moved slowly around the room, watching everything. A loud sound filled the hall. It was like a bell mixed with a bird call. All the talking stopped. "The council will now begin," said a voice that came from everywhere at once. "Chancellor Morden will speak." A creature that looked like a giant ant with silver skin stood up. Its voice was high and sharp. "Today we decide if the species called humans can join our council as full members." Lee felt his jaw tighten. After 50 years of contact with other worlds, Earth was still being tested, still being judged. Many species have questions about these humans. Chancellor Morden continued. "We will hear from those who wish to speak." A massive creature with dark red scales stood up. Lee had studied this one too. General Kivtar of the reptilian hegemony. He was 3 times taller than Lee and probably weighed as much as a small car. "Honored Chancellor," Kivtar said in a voice like rocks grinding together. "I question why we waste time on these soft creatures. Humans have been in space for only 50 years. My people have ruled the stars for 2,000 years. Several aliens made noises that might have been agreement." Lee's hands stayed perfectly still, but his muscles grew tighter. Park So-min stood up. "General Kivtar, we understand that humans are new to galactic society, but we have much to offer. Our technology may be young, but it is creative. Our science may be limited, but it asks new questions." "Technology," Kivtar laughed. The sound was like metal being torn apart. "Your ships are slow. Your weapons are weak. Your soldiers are tiny and break easily." Lee's right eye twitched once. That was the only sign that he had heard the insult. "We have seen your military records," continued Kivtar. "Humans fight each other over small pieces of land. You make war over resources that could be shared. You kill each other for believing in different gods. This is not the behavior of a civilized species." A blue-skinned alien with 4 arms raised one hand. "I must disagree with General Kivtar. Humans have shown remarkable adaptability. In 50 years, they have learned our languages, understood our customs, and built relationships with dozens of species, relationships built on fear," said another alien, this one covered in what looked like white fur. "Humans are predators. Look at their eyes. Look at how they move. They hunt." Lee almost smiled at that. The alien was not wrong. Park So-min spoke again. "It is true that humans have a history of conflict. But we also have a history of cooperation. We have ended wars, not just started them. We have saved species from extinction, including our own. We have learned to live together despite our differences." "Pretty words," Kivtar said. "But words are easy. Action is what matters. Your people claim to be warriors, but what wars have you won against real enemies? What battles have you fought against species that could actually fight back?" The hall grew quiet. Lee knew that most aliens thought human conflicts were small and unimportant. They had not been there when humans fought in jungles and deserts, in cities and mountains. They had not seen what humans could do when they had to survive. "Perhaps," said a thin alien with silver skin, "we should test these humans. See what their military is truly capable of." "An excellent idea," Kivtar said, his eyes fixed on Lee Tae-ho. "I see they have brought one of their soldiers, a small one." Lee felt the attention of hundreds of aliens turn to him. He did not move. He did not speak. He just stood there, calm and ready. "This human is a Navy SEAL," Park So-min said. "One of our most elite soldiers." Elite Kivtar made that grinding laugh again. "He looks like he would break if I touched him." General Kivtar, Chancellor Morden said, "Please remember that we are here to discuss membership, not to issue challenges." "Of course," Kivtar said, but his eyes stayed on Lee. "I am simply curious about human military capabilities. After all, if they join our council, they may need to help defend against real threats." An alien that looked like a walking tree made a sound like wind through leaves. The humans defeated the Zephyrian raiders last year. That was impressive. The Zephyrians Kivtar waved one massive hand. Pirates and thieves, any real military could handle them. Lee knew the truth about that fight. The Zephyrians had attacked a human colony ship. Lee's team had been nearby on a training mission. What the aliens called handling the raiders, Lee called 15 minutes of work. But he did not speak. That was not his job. I propose a test, Kivtar said. Let this human face one of my soldiers. Hand-to-hand combat. No weapons. We will see how elite he truly is. The hall filled with the sounds of different species talking at once. Some seemed excited by the idea. Others sounded worried. Park Soman looked back at Lee. He gave her the smallest nod. He was ready for whatever came next. We will consider your proposal, Chancellor Morden said. But first, let us hear from other species. As more aliens stood to speak, Lee continued to watch and listen. He could feel Kivtar's eyes on him, studying him like a predator studies prey. The general had no idea that he was looking at the wrong species. The real predator was looking right back at him. The next morning came too early for most of the alien delegates, but Lee Tejo had been awake for 2 hours. He finished his morning exercises in the small room given to the Earth delegation, push-ups, sit-ups, stretches. His body was a weapon, and weapons needed daily care. Captain Kim Hyun-woo knocked on his door. Ready for another day of politics. Lee pulled on his uniform jacket. Ready for whatever comes. Kim was Marine Force Recon, sent as backup security. He was shorter than Lee, but built like a rock. His job was to watch the crowds while Lee watched the ambassador. They walked to the assembly hall together. The corridors were filled with aliens, heading to the morning session. Most ignored the two humans. A few stared with curiosity. Others looked away quickly when Lee met their eyes. The talk last night was not good, Kim said quietly in Korean. Many species are still not sure about us, let them doubt, Lee replied. Doubt makes people careless. Ambassador Park So-min was already at their seats, reading reports on her tablet. Dr. Choi Min-young sat beside her. The doctor was young but smart, sent to study alien biology and help with medical emergencies. Any problems during the night? Park asked. None, Lee said. He had spent 3 hours walking the halls, learning the layout, old habits from his SEAL training. Always know your exits. Always know your enemy's position. The morning session began with a discussion about military cooperation. Different species talked about sharing defense duties and protecting trade routes. Lee listened carefully. Military cooperation meant humans would need to prove they could fight alongside aliens. General Kivtar stood up when it was his turn to speak. The reptilian hegemony controls 17 systems. Our military protects over 40 billion citizens. We have fought wars that lasted centuries. We have defeated enemies that could destroy planets. He paused and looked directly at the human section. How can we trust species that have never faced real danger? Humans fight only other humans. They have never faced an enemy that could wipe them out completely. Lee's jaw tightened. The general did not know about the nuclear war scare of 2019, or the asteroid that nearly hit Earth in 2031, or the plague that killed 200 million people before humans found a cure. Humans knew about extinction. They had danced with it many times. Park So-min stood up. General Kivtar, humans may be new to space, but we are not new to survival. We have faced many threats to our species. We have learned to work together when survival depends on it. Survival against what? Kivtar laughed. Wild animals, weather, disease, these are not enemies. These are just the problems of living on a world. We have fought wars that could have ended our civilization, Park said. We chose to step back from that edge. We chose peace over destruction. That choice required more strength than fighting. Several aliens made sounds of agreement, but Ki was not finished. Peace, he said with disgust. The choice of the weak. Real strength is taking what you need. Real strength is making others fear you. Humans talk about peace because they are too weak to take what they want. Lee felt his hands want to form fists. He kept them relaxed. Anger was useful, but only when controlled. Your human females, Kivtar continued, they lead your government. They make your military decisions. This shows how soft your species has become. In proper civilizations, females stay safe while males do the fighting. Dr. Choi Min-young looked up from her notes. Her face was calm, but Lee could see the anger in her eyes. General Kivtar, Park said, her voice still diplomatic. Human females have fought in our military for over a century. They have led nations, commanded armies, and died for their people. Strength comes in many forms. Died for their people. Kivtar stood up from his massive chair. He was even bigger standing up. That proves my point. Females who die in battle are wasted. They should be protected, not sent to fight. This is why humans are confused about war. The hall grew quiet. Even aliens who had been talking stopped to listen. Our way is better, Kivtar said, walking toward the human section. Males fight, females make young. Simple, effective. Your way makes everyone weak. Park stood up to face him. She was barely half his height, but she did not back down. Our way makes everyone strong. When all people can fight, all people can protect what matters. Foolish, Kivtar said. He was now only a few steps away from the human section. His huge shadow fell over Park. You sound like a child playing at being a leader. Lee Tae-ho stepped forward. One step, just enough to place himself between the general and his ambassador. His movement was smooth and quiet, but every alien in the hall noticed it. Ah, Kivtar said, looking down at Lee. The little soldier wants to protect his female leader. How touching. Lee said nothing. His eyes stayed fixed on Kivtar's face. His body was relaxed, but ready. You know what I think, Kivtar said, moving even closer. I think human males are weak because their females are allowed to give orders. I think your soldiers are soft because they follow female leaders. Park's voice was sharp now. General Kivtar, you are insulting the entire human species. I am telling the truth, Kivtar said. Your species is weak. Your soldiers are weak. Your leaders are weak. He leaned down toward Park. And you, little female, are the weakest of all. The insult hung in the air like poison gas. Lee felt every muscle in his body tighten. His training told him to stay calm. His instincts told him to act. Chancellor Morden started to speak. General Kivtar, please return to your seat. This behavior is not appropriate for Kivtar raised one massive hand to silence the Chancellor. I am not finished. He turned back to Park, who stood her ground despite being dwarfed by the huge alien. You want to know what real strength looks like. You want to see how a real warrior treats disrespect. Before anyone could react, Kivtar's hand swung in a wide arc. The back of his scaled hand struck Lee Tae-ho across the face with a sound like a whip crack. The hit was hard enough to stagger a normal man. Lee's head snapped to the side. A thin line of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. But Lee did not fall. He did not stumble. He did not cry out. He simply turned his head back to face Kivtar. His dark eyes were calm. To calm the entire assembly hall fell silent. Hundreds of aliens stared at the scene. Some expected the human to collapse. Others expected him to run. None of them expected what happened next. Lee Tae-ho smiled. Time seemed to stop in the Grand Assembly Hall. Lee Tae-ho stood perfectly still, blood trickling from his mouth. His smile was small and cold. It was the smile of a predator that had just been given permission to hunt. General Kivtar looked confused. He had expected the human to fall down, to cry out, to show fear. Instead, the small soldier stood there like nothing had happened. Did you not feel that? Kivtar asked, raising his massive hand again. Perhaps I was too gentle with you. Little human Lee's smile grew wider. I felt it. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the silent hall. Every alien heard those 3 words. Many would remember them for the rest of their lives. Ambassador Park So-min watched her bodyguard carefully. She knew Lee better than anyone else. In the room, she had seen him in combat zones, in diplomatic meetings, in crisis situations. She had never seen him smile like that. Her right hand moved slightly, just a tiny movement. Most aliens would not notice it, but Lee saw it. It was the signal they had practiced many times. Your choice. Your call. Chancellor Morden finally found his voice. General Kivtar, return to your seat immediately. This behavior is unacceptable. Unacceptable. Kivtar laughed, his grinding laugh. I am teaching this human about respect, something his species clearly does not understand. He leaned down toward Lee, bringing his massive head closer. Do you understand now, little soldier? Do you see the difference between real strength and human weakness? Lee looked up at the giant alien. His dark eyes were calm as deep water. I understand perfectly. Captain Kim Hyun-woo watched from his position near the wall. His hand moved slowly toward his sidearm. Not to draw it, but to be ready. He knew that look in Lee's eyes. He had seen it before, in places where people died quickly. Dr. Choi Min-young pressed herself back in her chair. She was smart enough to know that something terrible was about to happen. The air in the room felt heavy, like the moment before lightning strikes. Good, Kivtar said. Now apologize to me. Apologize for your species' weakness. Apologize for thinking you could stand with real warriors. The aliens in the hall leaned forward to hear what the human would say. Some expected him to apologize. Others thought he might try to fight back and fail. A few of the older, more experienced species held their breath. They had heard stories about humans in combat. Old stories. Scary stories. Lee wiped the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. He looked at the red stain on his skin for a moment. Then he looked back at Kivtar. I have something to tell you, Lee said quietly. Speak, Kivtar commanded. In human military training, Lee said, we learn about something called rules of engagement. Do you know what that means? Kivtar made a dismissive sound. Human rules. Weakness, disguised as honor. Rules of engagement tell us when we can fight and when we cannot, when we can kill and when we must hold back. Lee's voice stayed perfectly calm. They keep us from becoming monsters. More weakness, Kivtar said. The rules are very clear. Lee continued. We cannot attack unless we are attacked first. We cannot use deadly force unless our lives are threatened. We cannot kill unless someone tries to kill us. Several aliens began to understand where this was going. A few started to move away from the confrontation. But there is one more rule, Lee said, the most important rule of all. What rule? Keith asked, though he was starting to sound less confident. Lee's smile disappeared. His face became as cold as winter. If someone strikes a human soldier in front of witnesses, they have declared war on the human species. At that point, all other rules are suspended. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. You were trying to scare me with words, Kivtar said, but his voice was not as steady as before. I am not trying to scare you, Lee said. I am explaining why you are already dead. Before anyone could blink, Lee moved. His right hand went to his belt. Hidden in what looked like a normal uniform accessory was a combat knife. The blade was only 4 inches long, but it was made of military-grade steel that could cut through armor. Lee's left hand grabbed Kivtar's wrist, pulling the giant alien's arm down and forward. This brought Kivtar's head lower, closer to Lee's level. The knife appeared in Lee's right hand, like magic. One moment it was hidden. The next moment it was moving through the air. Lee knew alien anatomy. Dr. Choi had briefed him on the weak points of every species on the council. Reptilian species like Kivtar had tough scales everywhere, except for the joints between their skull plates. The knife slid between 2 plates at the base of Kivtar's skull. It went in exactly 2 inches, deep enough to sever the spinal cord, but not deep enough to get stuck in bone. Lee twisted the blade once, making sure the job was complete. Then he pulled it out and stepped back. The entire attack took less than 2 seconds. General Kivtar's eyes went wide with shock. His mouth opened to speak, but no words came out. His massive body swayed for a moment, like a tree in the wind. Then, he fell. The sound of his body hitting the floor was like thunder. The impact shook the entire hall. Dust fell from the ceiling. Lee wiped his blade clean on his uniform and made it disappear back into his belt. He straightened his jacket and returned to his position behind Ambassador Park's chair. The assembly hall was completely silent. Hundreds of aliens stared at the scene in shock. Some looked at the body on the floor. Others looked at Lee, who stood calmly as if nothing had happened. Chancellor Morden's voice shook when he finally spoke. You killed him. Yes, Lee said simply. He was unarmed. Another alien called out. He was 3 times my size and struck me first. Lee replied. That makes him a weapon. An alien that looked like a walking crystal stood up. This is murder. This human must be arrested. Under what law? Ambassador Park asked, speaking for the first time since the attack. General Kivtar committed assault in front of hundreds of witnesses. Commander Lee responded with appropriate force to defend himself. Appropriate force. The crystal alien shrieked. He killed him. Yes, Park said calmly. That is what happens when you attack a human soldier. Captain Kim walked over to check Kivtar's body. He knelt down and felt for a pulse, though everyone knew it was pointless. After a moment, he stood up and nodded once to Lee. Confirmed dead, Kim said. The hall erupted in chaos. Some aliens demanded justice. Others called for the humans to be expelled from the council. A few of the older, wiser species simply sat in their chairs and watched. Through it all, Lee Tae-ho stood perfectly still, his hands behind his back, his face showing no emotion. He had done his job. The galaxy was about to learn what that meant. The chaos in the assembly hall grew louder by the minute. Aliens shouted in dozens of different languages. Some demanded that Lee Tae-ho be arrested. Others called for humans to be banned from the galaxy. A few species were already packing up to leave. Through all the noise, Lee stood behind Ambassador Park So-man, like a statue. His face showed no emotion. His hands remained behind his back. He looked like he was waiting for the next meeting to start. Chancellor Morden tried to restore order. Please, everyone return to your seats. We must discuss this situation calmly. Calmly, screamed the crystal alien. A murder just happened in front of us. How can we be calm? A deep voice cut through the noise like a sword through silk. Because this was not murder. Everyone turned to look. An old alien was standing slowly from his seat in the back of the hall. He was tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and scars covering his arms. His uniform was simple but marked with many battle honors. Admiral Rackstool, Chancellor Morden said with surprise. You have been silent for the entire session. I have been listening, Admiral Rackstool said. His voice carried easily through the hall, and remembering. He walked down toward the center of the room, moving carefully on old legs. Every alien watched him. Rackstool was famous throughout the galaxy. He had fought in more wars than most species could count. Remembering, what? Asked the crystal alien. Admiral Rackstool stopped near Kivtar's body. He looked down at the dead general, then up at Lee Tae-ho. Remembering the last time I saw a human soldier kill someone. The hall grew quiet. Even the species that had been shouting stopped to listen. It was 40 years ago, the admiral said, during the Centauri conflict. My ship was damaged and crashed on a hostile world. My crew was trapped. The enemy was closing in. He paused, lost in the memory. A human rescue ship found us. Just one ship, with 12 human soldiers. The enemy had 300 warriors surrounding our position. Several aliens leaned forward to hear better. I told the human commander that rescue was impossible. Too many enemies, he should leave us and save his own people. Admiral Rackstool smiled sadly. Do you know what he said? What? Chancellor Morden asked. He said, Admiral, humans don't leave people behind, ever. The old warrior's voice grew stronger. Then those 12 humans attacked 300 enemies, and they won. The crystal alien made a sound of disbelief. Impossible. 12 against 300. I was there, Admiral Rackstool said firmly. I saw it with my own eyes. The humans moved like ghosts. They struck like lightning. They fought like creatures from a nightmare. In 30 minutes, it was over. He looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of different species. That day, I learned something important about humans. They are not just soldiers. They are weapons that choose when to fire. A furry alien near the front raised one paw, but they are so small, so weak-looking, that is their greatest strength, Admiral Rackstool said. Everyone underestimates them. Everyone thinks they are harmless. Even I thought that, until I saw them fight. He walked over to stand near Lee Teho. General Kivtar made the same mistake today. He thought this human was weak because he was small. He thought this human was harmless because he stayed quiet. Lee looked at the old admiral. For the first time since the fight, his expression softened slightly. He gave a small nod of respect. Humans Admiral Rackstool continued, do not start fights. But they end them always. The main doors of the assembly hall opened again. A new group of humans walked in, led by a woman in a formal diplomatic uniform. She was older than Ambassador Park, with gray hair and sharp eyes. Ambassador Sung the Jin, Chancellor Morden said, we were not expecting you. I came as soon as I heard about the incident. Ambassador Sung said. Her voice was calm but carried authority. Behind her walked several human officials and what looked like lawyers. She surveyed the scene, taking in Kivtar's body and the chaotic assembly. I see the situation is as serious as reported. Your soldier murdered General Kipatar. The crystal alien shouted. Ambassador Sung looked at the alien with cold eyes. Did he? She opened a tablet and began reading. According to Galactic law, Section 47, Subsection 12, any unprovoked physical assault against a diplomatic representative or their security detail constitutes an act of war against their species. The hall grew very quiet. General Kivatar struck Commander Lee Teho without provocation, in front of hundreds of witnesses. Under Galactic law, this was an act of war by the reptilian hegemony against humanity. She looked around the room. Commander Lee's response was not only justified under our laws, but restrained under our customs. Restrained. Several aliens asked at once. A human soldier attacked in defense of his people has the right to respond with any level of force necessary. Ambassador Sung explained. Commander Lee used a small blade and made one precise strike. He could have used explosives. He could have used poison gas. He could have called for military backup. She paused to let that sink in. Instead, he chose the minimum force required to neutralize the threat. That is what we call restraint. Captain Kim stepped forward. Ambassador, if I may. She nodded. The general weighed approximately 800 pounds and stood 9 feet tall. Kim said he had natural armor plating and claws that could tear through steel. Commander Lee weighs 180 pounds and is 6 feet tall. Under any reasonable definition, this was self-defense against a superior opponent. A new voice spoke from the crowd, but he killed him so easily. Admiral Rackstool answered, that is what makes humans dangerous. They train every day to be perfect killers, then they choose not to kill. When someone forces them to make a different choice, he gestured at Kivtar's body. Ambassador Sung addressed the entire assembly. Humans prefer peace. We always try diplomacy first. We offer friendship to those who want it, but we are prepared for war against those who choose it. She looked directly at Chancellor Morden. The question now is, does this council want humanity as a friend or an enemy? The Chancellor was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke carefully. What would humanity want as members of this council? The same thing we have always wanted, Ambassador Park said, speaking for the first time since the fight. Respect, cooperation, peace between species. And if someone threatens that peace, asked a nervous-looking alien, Lee Teho spoke for only the second time that day. Then they learn why the galaxy fears us. Admiral Rackstool smiled grimly. I have fought beside humans. I have fought against humans. I have seen what they can do when they must. He looked around the hall. Trust me when I say, you want them as friends. Chancellor Morden called for a vote, all in favor of granting humanity full membership in the Galactic Council. Hands, claws, tentacles, and other appendages rose throughout the hall. The vote was unanimous. As the session ended, Lee noticed several alien species approaching the human delegation. They all wanted the same thing, military cooperation. Agreements. The galaxy had finally learned what human soldiers could do. Now they wanted those soldiers on their side. 3 months had passed since the incident in the assembly hall. The galaxy had changed in ways nobody expected. Commander Lee Tae-ho sat in his new office on Nexus Prime, reading reports from across human space. His title was now Military Liaison to the Galactic Council, but everyone just called him the SEAL. Word of what happened to General Kiftar had spread to every corner of the galaxy. A soft knock came at his door. "Come in," Lee said. Captain Kim Hyun-woo entered, carrying a stack of files. "More requests for training partnerships," Kim said, setting the papers on Lee's desk. "The Aquarian Defense Force wants to send 50 officers to Earth for combat training. The Crystalline Empire is offering to trade mining rights for human military advisors." Lee looked through the files. Every day brought new requests. Species that had ignored humans for 50 years now wanted to learn from them. Species that had called humans weak now begged for protection agreements. "Any problems?" Lee asked. "The usual," Kim replied. "Some species still think they can handle humans easily. 3 pirate groups tried to attack human merchant ships last week. Results: all 3 groups are gone. Completely." Kim smiled grimly. The merchant ships were carrying marine security teams. The pirates learned the hard way that human traders are not defenseless. Lee nodded. This was becoming common. Pirates and raiders who had never worried about human ships were discovering that every human vessel carried trained fighters. What looked like simple cargo crews were often ex-military personnel who knew how to fight. The door opened again. Ambassador Park So-min walked in, followed by Dr. Choi Min-young. Both women looked tired but satisfied. "How did the medical conference go?" Lee asked. "Better than expected," Dr. Choi said. 17 species want to share medical knowledge with us. They are especially interested in human surgical techniques and combat medicine." "Combat medicine?" Kim asked. "Humans are very good at keeping people alive after they get hurt," Park explained. "Other species lose many soldiers to wounds that human medics can easily treat." Lee understood. Humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They had learned to save lives as well as take them. Other species were impressed by both skills. "There is something else," Park said, sitting down across from Lee's desk. "The reptilian hegemony wants to meet with us." This was surprising. After Kiftar's death, the reptilian hegemony had been very quiet. They had not caused any trouble, but they had also not contacted humans directly. "What do they want?" Lee asked. "To apologize," Park said, "and to ask for help." Kim raised an eyebrow. "Help with what?" "Their military is having problems," Park explained. After news of Kiftar's death spread, many of their enemies became bolder. 3 different species have attacked reptilian territory in the past month. They think Kiftar's defeat means all reptilians are weak. Dr. Choi added, "Their enemies are testing them?" Lee thought about this. Kiftar had been their most famous general. His death had made the entire reptilian military look vulnerable. "What kind of help do they want?" Lee asked. "Training," Park said. "They want human instructors to teach their soldiers. They also want a military cooperation agreement. If they are attacked, humans would help defend them. In exchange for what? Access to their territory, trading rights, and a formal apology for Kiftar's behavior." Lee considered this carefully. The reptilian hegemony controlled some of the richest systems in the galaxy. An alliance with them would be valuable for humanity. "What do you think?" Park asked. "I think," Lee said slowly, "that the galaxy is learning an important lesson, which is respect is earned through actions, not words." A communication device on Lee's desk started beeping. He pressed a button and Admiral Raxtul's face appeared on the screen. "Commander Lee," the old admiral said. "I hope I am not interrupting." "Not at all, Admiral. What can I do for you?" "I wanted to give you an update on the joint patrol program," Raxtul said. "Human and Centauri ships have been working together for 2 months now. The results are remarkable. Good results, I hope." "Excellent results. Piracy in our patrol zones has dropped by 90%. Just the sight of human ships is enough to make most criminals run away." This made sense to Lee. Word about human military capabilities was spreading fast. Smart criminals avoided fights they could not win. "There is something else," Admiral Raxtul continued. "The Council has received a request from the Outer Rim colonies. They want human protection against the Void Raiders." Lee felt his blood grow cold. The Void Raiders were not ordinary pirates. They were a species that destroyed entire worlds for fun. They had wiped out 6 civilizations in the past century. "The Council is meeting tomorrow to discuss the request," Admiral Raxtul said. "Your presence would be ... valuable." After the Admiral signed off, the room was quiet for a moment. "The Void Raiders," Kim said finally. "That would be a real war." Yes, Lee agreed. "Not a quick fight like with Kiftar, a real military campaign." "Are humans ready for that?" Dr. Choi asked. Park answered. "Humans have been ready for war since we first picked up sticks and stones. The question is, does the galaxy want to see what we can really do?" The next day, Lee stood before the full Galactic Council once again. This time, there was no doubt about human membership. Every species in the hall treated him with respect and careful attention. Chancellor Morden addressed the assembly. The Outer Rim colonies have requested military assistance against the Void Raiders. This is a serious threat that requires a serious response. Several species spoke about the dangers. The Void Raiders had never been defeated. They attacked without warning and left nothing alive behind them. The colonies need protection now, said one alien. Before the Raiders strike again, who has the military strength to face them? Asked another. All eyes turned to Lee Taeho. He stood up slowly. The hall fell silent, waiting for his words. The human military has studied the Void Raiders for 20 years. Lee said, we know their tactics, we know their weaknesses. We know how to beat them. How many human soldiers would this require? Chancellor Morden asked. Lee thought carefully before answering. 1 battle group, 12 ships, 3,000 marines. Several aliens made sounds of surprise. Only 3,000, one asked. The Void Raiders have destroyed entire fleets. Those fleets, Lee said calmly, were not human. Admiral Rackstool stood up. I support the human proposal. If anyone can stop the Void Raiders, it is them. The vote was unanimous once again. As the session ended, Lee realized something important had changed. For the first time since humans entered the galaxy, other species were not asking if humans could fight, they were asking humans to fight for them. The galaxy had finally learned what Lee had always known. Humans were not just another species trying to survive among the stars, they were the species other civilizations called when survival was no longer guaranteed. The age of human military dominance had begun.